Hi, everyone. Just wanted to let you know that we'll give people about 2 to 3 minutes before we start.
Hi, everybody. We're waiting probably another 2 minutes and then we will start. Hi, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening to launch the Somerville Avenue Quick Build Safety Improvement Project. I know that's a handful. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Councillors Ben-Ewan Campen and Naima Said. Councillors, would you like to share some welcome remarks? Councillor Said. Oops, Said just left. Hope I didn't scare her. Councillor Ewan Campen.
Sure, I won't take any time. Just wanted to say hi to everybody. Thank you all for being here. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing the presentation. And let's get to it.
Thank you. Councillor Said, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks all for being here. And yeah, excited to be here to hear the presentation and learn about the quick build.
Great. Thank you so much. We will start with sharing some logistics for tonight's virtual meeting.
Yeah, Viola, sorry, do you want to change the slide?
Rishika, are you going to go through the virtual meeting instructions?
Yes, sorry. Could you change the slide?
Oh, of course. Yes, that was on me. My
You're fine.
apology.
Awesome. Okay, so we are recording this meeting, and we'll be posting a recording of the meeting on the project's website, which is the Summer Voice page for Somerville Avenue. Your camera is off for the duration of the meeting, and we will enable your mic and video if you want when you are speaking. Throughout the meeting, we will also be conducting a few optional poll questions just to, you know, get some more ideas of what you're thinking throughout the presentation. After the full presentation is over, we will open the meeting to a discussion. We'll first answer any questions that came in through the chat, and then we'll move into spoken comments. You can send in any written questions to the host throughout the meeting, and we will read them out loud during the discussion period. Across the presentation, you'll also see some small purple boxes that are marked things to think about. Use these as guidelines to think more about what kind of responses or feedback you want to share in the discussion portion, or in the survey, or in any of the upcoming engagement opportunities for this project. If you are having any issues, any technical difficulties, just email the transportation at somervillema.gov and we can help you, or you can call this number. It's 781-254-3947. Um, Great. We want to learn a bit more about who is joining us this evening. So we have, like I mentioned, a few optional poll questions throughout the meeting. You'll see these pop up in small windows. And I am just going to share the first one just to get to know a little bit more about who is here today. Great. We'll keep it open for a few minutes. Oh, not minutes, a few seconds. Great. It looks like we have almost around 40% of people here live within a 5-minute walk from Somerville Ave, which is great, between Elm Street and Bow Street. That's awesome. So we have a lot of immediate abutter representation. Okay, I am going to end the poll. Awesome. And now just going to go over some meeting purpose, outcomes, and process. In terms of purpose, we aim to create a safer design for Somerville Avenue between Elm Street and Bow Street as part of the Somerville Bicycle Network Plan and the Safe Streets Ordinance. In this meeting, we will be introducing the project. You'll learn more about the goals, the background, and potential design options, and other ways to engage throughout the design development. In terms of outcomes, we want to be able to hear your transportation safety concerns for the project area and your initial feedback to help us start designing the quick build protected bike lanes project. In terms of process, we will present a slideshow on the project, and then we will have a question and answer session for community input over the next month. There will also be other opportunities to get involved in different ways. Awesome. We do have a second question, which was, what is your preferred way of traveling in Somerville? And we have about 41% people bike, and 31% people walk or roll in the project in Somerville, which is great. So I am now going to go over the agenda. Now that we've wrapped up our welcome, we will dive into the presentation. We will start with sharing a little bit about us, who we are, and what we do. We'll then describe why we are going through this process for doing this work on Somerville Ave. We will describe more about the project plan, talk about its existing conditions and potential improvements on the street. And we'll wrap up the presentation with describing what is happening next and other engagement opportunities. Following that, we will open it up to a discussion. And now I will hand it off to Viola to start the presentation.
And she starts with being mute. Sorry about that. Thank you, Rishika. And before describing the project, I'd like to introduce the city team and also want to go through the plans that inform and guide all of our projects. This project is being led by the Mobility Division, which is a part of the city's Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development, known as OSBCD. And we in the Mobility Division aim to make our streets safer for everyone who travels through them by implementing street reconstruction projects, traffic calming installations, as well as quick build projects. There are 3 of us that are primarily in charge of the Somerville Avenue quick build project: Rishika Duan, who you just heard from, our community outreach planner, Greg Hanifan, and myself, Viola Augustine, both planners in the Mobility Division. The listed values that you see on the slide shape our work. For all projects, we start first and foremost with the goal of keeping people safe on our streets. We also aim to increase access to public transit and to create more sustainable options for people to get around the city. We have 2 ordinances that underscore those commitments. The Complete Streets Ordinance from 2014, which broadly stipulates that streets should be designed for all modes of travel and all ages and abilities. And the Safe Street Ordinance, passed last year, set specific targets and timelines for implementing street safety projects, including protected bike lanes from the Bike Network Plan, accessible parking spaces, and pedestrian and transit improvements identified in the Vision Zero Action Plan. And that is not all. We have, in addition to these 2 ordinances, a number of long-range plans that contribute to our vision for this project. Somerville's comprehensive plan, SummerVision 2040, sets the city's broad values and goals for community-oriented planning. The Climate Forward Plan ensures that our projects also support the city's mission to decarbonize our transportation system. The Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan helps us make our streets more accessible to everyone. This ADA transition plan is undergoing an update currently, and so hopefully we will see a new version soon. And finally, the Bike Network Plan includes our vision for a network of safe infrastructure for people biking. Vision Zero is the city's commitment to eliminate deaths and serious injuries on our streets, and the city's Vision Zero Action Plan provides a framework to reach this goal. We know that despite our best efforts, people make mistakes and will continue to do so. Therefore, we need to design our streets to account for these mistakes, to be forgiving, and to ensure that they don't result in fatalities or life-altering injuries. The graphic here illustrates some of the thinking, showing our reductions in vehicle speeds have a huge effect on how likely someone is to survive a crash. And that is one of the reasons we are so focused on speed reductions in our projects. Now, you might ask yourself, why are we doing any work on Somerville Avenue? And Greg Hanifan will explain.
Thanks, Viola. So the extent of this project is Somerville Ave between Elm Street and Bow Street. And the image on this slide is showing those limits of the project highlighted within the dashed lines. I'll now share, as Viola said, why this portion of Somerville Ave was selected for this quick build project. This section of Somerville Ave is on the city's high crash network, which means it experiences among the highest number and rates of crashes of streets across the city. In particular, the street is on the high crash network for pedestrian and bicycle crashes, which are more likely to result in serious injury when they occur. The high crash network for pedestrian and bicycle crashes is defined as 3 or more crashes for an intersection and 10 or more crashes for a corridor over a 5-year period. Within our project limits, all of Somerville Ave is on the high crash network for bicycle and pedestrian crashes, as well as 3 intersections, which are Somerville Ave and Lowell Street, Somerville Ave and Central Street, and Somerville Ave and Dane Street. And the map on the right there has the project area in the yellow box. Looking at more closely at some recent crash trends in the 5-year period between 2020 and 2024, there were a total of 68 crashes on Somerville Ave within our project limits. The chart on the bottom left shows the breakdown of these crashes between those that included motor vehicles only and those that included a person walking, rolling, or biking. Of the 68 crashes, 29 of them, or 43% of the total, included a person walking, rolling, or biking. The chart on the bottom right shows the breakdown of crashes within the project limits that resulted in a reported or possible injury. Of the 29 crashes, including a person walking, rolling, or biking, 23 of them resulted in a reported or possible injury, which illustrates the higher likelihood of an injury when a crash involves one of these vulnerable road users or someone who is not in a motor vehicle. Notably, there were also 10 crashes here that included motor vehicles only that resulted in a reported or possible injury, and all of these crash data emphasize the need to improve safety for all users along this section of Somerville Ave. Vehicle speeds and volumes are among the indicators of the likelihood of crashes and the chances of a serious injury occurring when a crash does occur. The posted speed limit on Somerville Ave in our project area is 20 miles per hour between Bow Street and Conway Park, which is designated as a safety zone, and 25 miles per hour west of Conway Park. Speed data collected in 2 locations in 2021 and 2022 found that between 31 to 39% of motor vehicles were traveling faster than those posted speed limits. Vehicle counts collected at the same time found an average of almost 12,000 motor vehicles traveling on this part of Somerville per day on average, which ranks among the highest volume streets in Somerville. We're also going to be collecting additional vehicle speed and volume data at 3 locations along Somerville Ave this spring to bolster this previously collected data. In addition to its status as a high crash network street, this section of Somerville Ave is designated for protected bicycle lanes in both directions in the Somerville Bicycle Network Plan's priority network. The map on the right shows the priority network in the area around Somerville Ave with the project limits in the yellow box. As part of the priority network, the city must install protected bicycle lanes here by 2030 as required by the Somerville City Council's Safe Streets Ordinance. Why do we install protected bike lanes as a way to improve safety? Protected bike lanes are a dedicated space for people on bikes that are physically separated from motor vehicles by some kind of barrier. For quick build projects, this protection often includes a striped buffer with a vertical object like a flex post. Parked cars can also sometimes serve as a barrier between people biking and motor vehicle traffic. Protected bike lanes are an important safety treatment on high volume streets because they increase comfort and access for people of all ages and abilities, reduce crash and injury risk, eliminate the threat of dooring from parked vehicles, reduce potential conflicts between vehicles and people biking, and they're often paired with narrower vehicle travel lanes or visually narrower streets, which encourages slower traffic speeds. The neighborhood context also played a role in the selection of Somerville Ave as for this quick build project. The map on this slide shows the area surrounding the project, with the project limits within the yellow dashed box. People have many reasons for traveling to or along Somerville Ave by different modes. The project area itself has major destinations such as Conway Park, Market Basket, and many small businesses that attract many from the neighborhood, the rest of Somerville, and surrounding cities and towns. Somerville Ave is centrally located and a convenient route for traveling to nearby commercial districts in Union Square, Border Square, Davis Square, Harvard Square, and Inman Square. The Kennedy and Argenziano schools are located just outside of the project area, meaning it is the most direct route for many families and children traveling to school by different modes, including walking, biking, and transit. There are 2 bus routes that serve Somerville Ave, which we'll discuss in more detail later in this presentation. The network of protected bicycle lanes around Somerville Ave continues to grow, including on Bow Street, Washington Street, Beacon Street, and Central Street. And there are also several projects currently in planning adjacent to this project area, which allows us to plan consistently and comprehensively for this corridor and neighborhood. And I'll discuss these projects in more detail in the next couple of slides. A small portion of Somerville Ave in the area of Central Street and Park Street will be reconstructed as part of a different project before our quick build project begins. This project will include floating bus stops, a raised crossing, sidewalk curb extensions, and other traffic calming measures. Design has been completed and construction is expected to begin later this year. The Somerville Ave quick build project that we're here to discuss today will connect with both ends of this project. The Elm Beacon Connector project is another quick build project that includes Elm Street and Somerville Ave just west of our project limits. This project includes similar elements as ours, such as protected bike lanes and other potential treatments that we will discuss later in this presentation. The design for that project is currently in progress, which presents a great opportunity for the 2 projects to coordinate and ensure consistency. Implementation of the Elm Beacon Connector project is expected to begin in 2026. The Union Square Plaza and Streetscape project will redesign and improve access to the open space in Union Square, including safety improvements to the streets around Union Square. The project will reach the eastern edge of our Somerville Ave quick build project. It's currently in design and planning and presents another opportunity to coordinate between those 2 projects. As of now, there is not a construction timeline for this project. And lastly, the Central Somerville Avenue project is an interdepartmental effort to support the creation of a research and development district in an area just to the south of Somerville Ave. While this project doesn't currently propose to include any changes to Somerville Ave, it is important for our quick build planning on Somerville Ave to consider the context of all projects in the area.
Thank you, Greg, for this great introduction to why we're doing this project. And now we're finally ready to introduce what we're actually anticipating to be part of this project. And I know you've seen this map a bunch of times, and Greg did a great job describing where we are connecting. So again, we're starting where the Elm Beacon connector ends, and some of those direct limits we're still figuring out with the project team that is doing the Elm Beacon connector. And then to the east, we will end at Bow Street, and that's where the future Union Square Plaza and Streetscape project will continue along Somerville Avenue. And overall, it's about a length of 0.98 miles, which will result in doubling the bicycle lanes because we will have protected bike lanes. So we will have about 1.96 additional bicycle lanes, protected bicycle lanes. And I'd like to explain why this is a quick build project. As we mentioned earlier, protected bicycle lanes are supposed to be implemented on Somerville Avenue by 2030. However, the street is not on our capital investment plan and not, as you can see on the map shown on the slide, part of the 5-year repaving plan. And not being included in either of these plans means it's not scheduled to be reconstructed before 2030. And just as an aside, if you'd like to understand the process of selecting streets for the 5-year plan and finding out which streets are included, you can follow the link provided on the slide. So an alternative way for us to deliver protected bicycle lanes are quick build projects. Quick build projects are using pavement marking, signage, and movable elements such as flexible bollards. And they allow us to implement the project in a much faster way, albeit not design it faster than standard construction. And it also allows us to be more flexible down the line if additional changes need to be made or we realize that things are not working. So it's actually a great way to do something like that before a full construction. And just to be clear what can and cannot be or will not be in this project, again, to reiterate, this is a project that focuses on safety improvements that can be achieved without reconstruction. And so what will definitely be included is installing protected bicycle lanes, as I just mentioned, using flex posts and removable curbs, pavement striping, and signage. Some parking will be removed as well as travel or drive lanes will get slightly narrower. And we will make sure that crosswalks become safer by designing for improved sightlines. Now for this category of definitely in the project, we are looking for your input on how to design these changes in the most effective way. The next category, what could be or what might be included, are changes to the parking regulations, bus stop changes, and traffic signal changes. And here we are looking for your feedback if and where these changes are needed. Finally, it's also important to note what is not included. Full repavement of the road or repouring of all the sidewalk will not be part of this project. We will also not add speed humps or raise crosswalks or add new crosswalks. No utility, lighting, or stormwater work will be done as part of this project. And we will also not add sidewalk elements such as planters or benches. So this does not mean you cannot let us know where any of these changes are needed, and we will record your comments, but we will not be able to incorporate them in this category for this quick build project. The timeline for this project: we are at the very beginning of the project, with this being the first public meeting. We have not started design beyond some test fitting of elements, as you will see in a minute. After this meeting, we will use the summer to collect feedback and comments from both the public and within city departments. We will then incorporate all of the information gathered in the summer of this year, 2025, for the initial design development to happen this fall and winter. And then when the weather is good enough to be out on the street again in the spring of 2026, we will present the initial design and again ask for your feedback. Then in the summer and beginning of fall 2026, we will finalize the design. And at the end of 2026, we will share the final design, and we will also secure a contractor so that implementation can happen in 2027. And at this point, I think Rishika will do another poll.
Yeah. Before we jump into the next section of explaining more about the existing conditions and potential improvements, want to just ask how you use Somerville Ave and specifically between Elm Street and Bow Street. So I'm going to start the poll, give it a few seconds for us to answer. Okay. We got 45% of people who visit the businesses on the street, and then a lot of people who do use this street to travel across the city to other destinations, and about 20% who do live on the street of this stretch. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishika, and everybody who responded. So we're finally ready to dive a little deeper and go through existing conditions and introduce anticipated quick build improvements. As Rishika mentioned, some of the slides give suggestions for what kind of feedback could be helpful in starting the design. However, please don't let that limit you. We want to hear any of your thoughts and any initial reactions. We will start with the roadway, existing widths and uses of the lanes and anticipated changes. Darn. So just a few images. The existing roadway is mostly consists of 2 travel lanes and parking on one or both sides. We have a few larger intersections, mainly Park Street and Dane Street. We have lots of crosswalks, and we have unprotected bicycle lanes in each direction along the entire corridor. The next slides now show these conditions in sections, both existing and anticipated. And I want to emphasize that the slides will show dimensions, and I ask you to keep in mind that they are not based on a survey. They show a common scenario, and that means existing lane widths will slightly differ throughout the corridor. So the section where you will see both parking on both sides is a common scenario along the street, and you kind of see it in the plan here. The common widths, existing widths, are an average sidewalk of 8.5 feet width on both sides. The parking lane widths are 8 feet on both sides, and there are 2 drive lanes, approximately 11 feet each. Now, an anticipated section to create parking protected bicycle lanes is shown underneath, and there we will still have the 8.5 foot wide sidewalks, clearly because we're not removing or moving curbs. We will have a 4.5 foot bike lane with a 2.5 foot buffer against the curb on either side. And the parking lanes are next to that, adjusted to be 7 feet wide, thus creating a parking protected bicycle lane with the addition of flex posts in the 2.5 foot buffer. And then the drive lanes are reduced to 10.5 feet. And as you can see, we can accommodate parking and flex post protected bike lanes without changing the location of existing curbs. The next common scenario is the parking on one side. So existing widths are that usually one side of the sidewalk, in this case, is wider. We're showing that as 15 feet. Again, with an 8 foot parking lane on one side, about 5.5 to 6 feet wide bicycle lanes, and 11.5 foot wide drive lanes. In an future scenario, in the anticipated section, we will again have 4.5 foot wide bike lanes with a 2.5 foot buffer next to parking, a 7 foot wide parking lane on one side, 11 feet wide drive lanes, and then on the other side a bike lane with no parking next to it, but with a 2.5 foot wide buffer with flex post. And these dimensions are a continuation from the Elm Street Elm and Beacon Connector, Somerville Avenue cross-section. The last typical scenario is at crosswalks, as you can see on the plan. And there you do not have parking. You have wider sidewalks on each side, 15 feet shown here, with a 6.5 foot wide bike lane and 11.5 foot wide drive lanes. And in the anticipated scenario, we will reduce the drive lane slightly to give the bike lanes maximum width, both in buffer and in the lane itself. And in this scenario, there are some sections of Somerville Ave that have no parking on either side without a crosswalk, and we would basically add flex posts to the buffers in those scenario. And how does this look? How would that look in plan? So here's like a sample section, a sample stretch of Somerville Avenue where we overlaid what you've seen in sections as a plan. And the plan reflects an area where there's 2 parking on both sides. There's a crosswalk with no parking, and a bike in a very small section where you see parking on one side and a curb extension on the other side. And you can see we can arrange the 7 foot bike lane with buffer next to the 7 foot parking. We have 10.5 foot lanes And then again, the same thing on the other side, 7 feet parking and 7-foot bike lane with buffer. And at the crosswalks, you see that the bike lane wraps around the curb extension. And by providing space next to the crosswalk, which we want for clear corners, we actually get a fairly nice transition for the bicycle lanes, and not a strong jogging around the rather steep curb. So just to finish this section with an image, this is an existing parking and flex post protected bike lane. We have that on Holland Avenue already. And so that you just get a visual sense of what you can anticipate at Somerville Avenue. So before we look at intersections, I'd like to point out that the previous slide showed changes that will definitely happen. And I know I will repeat that, but I really want people to understand that this is a quick build project and not have unreasonable expectations. So the following slides are all about maybe changes. And as I said before, your feedback is valuable for us to understand what potential safety improvements you actually feel are needed, and we should do in addition to the protected bicycle lanes. So again, some visuals. The photos show some intersections along the corridor, Lowell Street intersection, which is primarily a pedestrian signalized intersection. It shows two of the major ones, Park Street and Dane Street, where we have 3 lanes. One of them is a turning lane. And then there's one image of a typical crosswalk along our side streets. As you see on all slides, our crosswalks on Somerville Avenue are distinct from the asphalt roadway by brick pavers. So what can we do in a quick build project to improve intersections? We can make signal changes. Mostly they will be timing changes, so we can change more green time if needed. We can also change the sequence of phasing and what mode goes in every phase. That is a fairly, generally an easy fix. We might be able to make some equipment upgrades, but no major upgrades are anticipated right now. So there's some limitation what we can do with the signal changes. We can also evaluate if all the existing signals along the project area are necessary. And in particular, oops, nope. Oh yeah. In particular, we looked at the signals right at Loring Street and at Beach Street. And again, we're looking for your feedback. Do you feel like these pedestrian signals are necessary? Pedestrian end signals are necessary. The other improvements we have talked about already, the clear corners. And these images very clearly show that if cars are parked too close to a crosswalk, especially kids that are not that tall, cannot be seen. So by making sure that parks cannot go that close, we can hugely improve the safety of a crosswalk. And we have data from Hoboken in New Jersey, where they have rolled out these clear corners citywide, and they had no reported traffic fatalities in over 6 years. So we feel this is a very low-hanging fruit to hugely improve safety. The last fairly easy safety improvement is what we call centerline hardening. We do deploy flex posts in the center, and that deters people from turning into side streets too fast. They have to really go around this flex post. It also indicates the presence of a crosswalk, so it's another visual cue for a driver to slow down. And I think I'm handing it over to Rishika again.
Gonna do another poll. This one is specifically just following more of what Viola mentioned and has talked about at the intersections. We want to know more about where do you feel most unsafe on Somerville Avenue. Okay. At the moment, we're getting most for Park Street and Central Street. A few for Elm Street and Craigie Street, about 13% people. Give it a few more seconds. Okay, looks like most people, about 59% of responses are Park Street and Central Street. And end the poll. Thank you.
All right, next I will talk bus service within our project limits. So bus service operates all along the segment of Somerville Ave within our project limit. This slide shows images of two of the existing bus stops, one by St. Anthony's Church and one by Market Basket. Currently, all of the bus stops in the project generally look similar to the ones that are shown here, with the bus pulling out of the travel lane across the bike lane to reach the bus stop. Later this year, as we shared earlier, as part of a different project, construction will begin on two floating bus stops near Central Street and Conway Park. The map on this slide shows the existing bus routes that serve the project area and the locations of all of the existing bus stops. The Route 83 services the project area west of Park Street, and the Route 87 services the entire project area. As part of the MBTA's bus network redesign effort, a future high-frequency bus route, the Route 96, will also serve the entire project area. However, a date has not yet been set for this route to launch. One of the bus service improvements that we can consider as part of this project is bus stop consolidation. Stop consolidation considers where the number of bus stops along a street can be reduced to find the best balance between convenient access and bus operations. Stop consolidation can help reduce bus delays for riders by reducing the number of times the bus is stopping. The MBTA's recommended bus stop spacing is between 1,000 and about 1,300 feet. All of the existing stops within the project limits are closer than that recommended spacing currently. And the map on this slide highlights one extreme instance where two stops are about 400 feet apart from each other. However, the recommended stop spacing is not a hard and fast rule, and proximity to key destinations is an important piece of locating bus stops. For example, we know that Conway Park and Market Basket are both destinations where we need to maintain bus stops, even if the bus stops end up being closer than that recommended minimum spacing. So we're very interested in hearing from community members about where you would like to see bus stops to include as part of our evaluation of possible consolidation opportunities. This map also highlights the Elm Beacon Connector project that we've discussed, which is conducting a similar evaluation of bus stop locations, and we will make sure that the two projects are coordinated on any bus stop changes that are being considered. Apart from consolidation, as part of this project, we can explore where it may be possible to relocate bus stops to create a safer and more comfortable experience for riders. This particularly applies to bus stop accessibility. We know that there are cases along Somerville Ave where buses currently don't have enough space to pull parallel to the curb, which means that the bus is not able to properly deploy its wheelchair ramp, and riders may need to step into the street in order to get onto the bus. For example, the bus stop in front of Market Basket heading toward Union Square is currently about 53 feet long, but would need to be a minimum of 100 feet long to meet the MBTA's definition of an accessible stop. We can't widen the existing stop because of the bump outs on both sides. but we can consider if there is an alternative location for this stop near the market basket that improves rider safety and accessibility. Generally, for a curbside bus stop like these ones, the city prefers to have bus stops after intersections and crosswalks, which we call a far side stop. And there are a few reasons for this preference. One, it tends to be safer. The buses don't block crosswalk visibility of oncoming traffic while they're in the bus stop. Two, it helps to reduce delay because the buses don't get blocked in by vehicles that are stopped at traffic signals. And three, it allows us to have shorter bus stops because the bus has more space in front of the stop to pull into it, whether that's an intersection or a driveway. It allows the stop itself to be shorter and can free up curb space for other uses such as parking or loading. All right, talk about parking now. The map on this slide shows the existing parking regulations on Somerville Ave within our project limits. The dark green is 2-hour parking except by permit. Red is metered parking. Orange is loading and short-term parking, and light blue is 15-minute parking. Most of the on-street parking is currently regulated as 2-hour parking except by permit, and there's also some limited metered and short-term parking. As Viola discussed previously, there currently is a mix of places with parking on both sides of the street, one side of the street, and some locations where there is no parking on either side of the street. As part of this quick build project, we have the opportunity to evaluate existing parking regulations and consider changes to better serve the needs of this area. With this being a commercial corridor, our priorities include 1, engaging with small businesses to learn about which parking regulations best support their needs, and 2, evaluating the need for new handicap accessible parking in the area. As mentioned, adding protected bike lanes on Somerville Ave will require removal of some parking, though our expectation at this time is that it will be minimal based on our initial evaluation of the road width. We have a graphic on the next slide that will show this in more detail. We do, however, also have the option to consider changes to regulations on side streets to mitigate the loss of any certain parking regulations on Somerville Ave. So I just mentioned that we're currently expecting parking removal to be minimal, even with the installation of the protected bike lanes. This is because along much of the street today, the travel lanes and parking lanes are wider than our standard widths for this type of street. So by reducing those widths to our standards as part of the quick build project, we anticipate being able to keep most of that parking that exists today. Where we expect parking removal will be needed most commonly is in places where the protected bike lane needs to transition around the existing curb bump outs. In the example block shown on this slide, this results in 1 parking space being removed on the south side of the street, while all of the parking on the north side of the street is maintained. However, even without protected bike lanes, the parking space number 11 on the left image would need to be removed to comply with the city's clear corner policy for parking setbacks from crosswalks that Viola discussed earlier. I'll note that this example represents only 1 scenario location, and parking removal will be different for every block depending on the locations of driveways and the specific width at that part of the road. There may be some cases where 0 parking spaces need to be removed, and in other cases, there may be multiple that need to be removed. And once we have a complete concept design, we will seek community feedback on the changes that are proposed. Sidewalk and street maintenance. The condition of the sidewalks and street vary along the corridor, and there are places where accessibility challenges exist today due to damage, as well as street furnishings in need of restoration. While street and sidewalk reconstruction are not included within the scope of this quick build project, We do have the opportunity to highlight problem areas and work across city departments to conduct repairs as part of our regular maintenance. So we invite community feedback on street and sidewalk repair issues, and we will work to incorporate these into the project to the extent possible. You can also submit repair issues to 311 or share them with us by email at any time, and they may also be able to be addressed on a sooner timeline than this project.
Great. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about what's happening next and how are the ways that you can engage. So we have broken down how community feedback will shape the design in each phase of the project. During our pre-concept design phase, which is happening now, we are looking to you to provide insight into transportation safety concerns in the area, which include identifying critical crosswalks to prioritize, sharing bus rider experiences and other critical transit service concerns, and sharing your experience traveling through intersections in the project area. During the concept design, we would look to you to ask questions about the details of the design. So you would share your feedback on what the design elements make you feel safe or unsafe, provide feedback on the types of parking regulations that best fit the needs of the blocks, share feedback on the bus stop proposals, and share your overall impressions of the new proposed design. After reviewing all the input we collected during the design development, we will then work to take the feedback and finalize a design to begin implementation, which is looking at spring and summer of 2027. We will work to spread the word about upcoming changes through a variety of ways, such as posters, street outreach pop-ups, and anything more once we get to that stage. We are always happy to field questions during this stage and listen to suggestions, but our main goal of this part of the process is to communicate plans and anticipated schedules for implementation. Next slide. Great. Engagement opportunities. So just talking more about what the next month is going to look like. We aim to provide a variety of ways for community members to be able to engage and provide feedback throughout the process of the project. This slide lists out some of those opportunities that will be available over the next few weeks. As you know, we started this evening with our virtual community meeting to introduce the project. Tomorrow, we'll be releasing a survey and a public input map where you can detail more of your feedback. At this stage, we aim to hear more about your transportation safety concerns and priorities on Somerville Avenue. We aim to meet people where they are at different high pedestrian traffic locations. So we will be doing street outreach pop-ups, and I'll talk more about that in after this slide. Along with that, we'll also be connecting with businesses one-on-one through business block walking. We're also committed to keep you all updated. So whether that's direct emails, printed flyers, through social media posts, you can sign up for the mobility newsletter on our website where we share updates there as well. And we will also be connecting with our transportation specific advisory committees to hear their questions and their feedback as well. So more specifically, we will be posting updates on the webpage for the surveys and the public input map that we're hoping to keep open till July 7th. Along with that, you'll also see more information for the mobility newsletter. And as I mentioned, we'll be doing some street outreach pop-ups. These are the 3 locations that we will be at. We'll be at Wilson Square, so kind of the start of the project, starting next week on Monday from 4:30 to 6:30. Then next on Wednesday, June 21st, we'll be outside Conway Park from 4:30 to 6:30. And then Market Basket, right outside Market Basket on Tuesday, June 24th from 1 to 3. We're doing that in the afternoon. We also have a tentative rain date scheduled for Monday, June 23rd from 4:30 to 6:30. Keep an eye out on our city social media and on the website for any updates if we need to move things around. As always, throughout this process, you can share any questions, any feedback, any thoughts over email via transportation at somervillema.gov, or you can always call us at 311 and at their number as well, the 617-666-3311. And now I will do, I promise, is the last poll of this session, is just to get your initial reaction of how you feel about what we presented so far and this project. I'm just going to start that now. Ooh, really quick. Okay, we got about 60% people who are excited about the project. And about 15 people who are excited but have a few more concerns and want to learn more. Awesome. Okay, I am going to end the poll. And with that, we will move. Thank you all for joining today. We're gonna move into our discussion session. Hopefully answer most of your questions. Just a few instructions. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're going to start with any unanswered questions that were in the chat, and then move on to spoken questions. If you want to send them to the chat, you can read them out loud. And we do see a lot of hands being raised. We will ask you to unmute and ask your questions. Please try to keep your questions to about 2 minutes per person to give everybody a chance. If you have any issues, please feel free to email or call us. And with that, Viola and Greg, I'm just going to go through some of the questions that we already got. So to start with, there's a question about the intersection of Elm Street and Somerville Avenue. Will the project be including that intersection with Craigie Street, or will it not be?
Yeah, I can answer that. And I think we mentioned it throughout the presentation that we will coordinate with the Elm Beacon Connector project, and we will have continuous bicycle lanes, and we'll, continuously improve, not continuously, but there will be no gap. Now, both projects are quick build projects, so you won't see any reconstruction of that area, the Wilson Square between Craigie and Elm Street. But other than that, we will try our best with quick builds to improve the safety and flow of all modes in that area.
And then could you speak a little bit about why it is beneficial for this project to have any signals be removed?
Yeah. When signals are not warranted in technical speed, it sometimes leads to a lot of people just not obeying the signal and crossing by red when it's red. So we're creating an unsafe situation for especially pedestrians and sometimes even cars if they have to wait for too long. That's one reason, one possible positive outcome by removing and having a regular crosswalk there. People pay more attention. The other one is obviously when the more traffic signals we have, the harder it is to regulate in peak hours the traffic and create phases that are reasonable for all modes. And as I said, there is no plan to remove anything yet. We want to hear from you, and with the traffic data, we will run these warrants to see if technically they would be not necessary.
Great. I'm going to do one more from the chat and then switch to a few spoken questions. One question that came was, I have been right hooked at a low speed at Somerville Ave and Dane Street. I fear that the bike lane bump outs would increase the likelihood of this occurring again. Since parking protected lanes reduce visibility further, what features of the design do we expect to help mitigate those risks?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it's a good one. We will look at all the sidelines and try to and we'll ensure that people on bikes can be properly seen. Beyond that, as we all know, on intersection, we're also dealing with emergency vehicles and larger vehicles needing to turn. So adding, my initial reaction would also be to do more protected flex post and with that, we always have to be careful. But I think it's a very good point and something we have to pay attention to. And that's where the devil is in the design detail. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
I'm going to move on to some of the hands that are up. There are about 7 people, and I will call based on the queue. So it'll be first Martin, then Alex, and then Jay Wilson. Martin, I am unmuting, so please feel free to ask your question.
So going back to the page that has the dates on it, you might want to check the first several dates, because the 19th is not a Monday.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you for pointing that out.
So that was all.
We'll update that and make sure it's updated when we put it on the website page. Just to confirm, it is June 16th, that is a Monday, and then June 18th, that's the Wednesday, and June 23rd, that's the Monday. Great. Alex Epstein.
Hello, Alex here. I was just updating the Monday, June 16th meeting on my calendar for correcting that. I just wanted to clarify about the Craigie Elm intersection, because I remember in the meeting for the Elm Beacon connector, I believe Brad said that's not part of the scope of that project, and which in my mind implied that it might be part of the scope of this one. I'm sure you're communicating, but I just wanted to flag that so that it doesn't get dropped by both projects. It would be terrific if that slip lane could be dead-ended on one side or the other to simplify the intersection today. So it's quite the right hook hazard today when I bike there with my 9-year-old to Conway Park and back. So that's my main comment. Thank you very much. Excited about the project overall. The other thing is just I would vote for minimizing travel lane width wherever possible, allocating that to the bike lane. I did put that in the chat, but just wanted to flag that because I saw some 11-foot lanes proposed and 4.5-foot bike lanes proposed. It would be great to flip that and try to keep the bike lanes at least 5 wherever possible, and the travel lanes no more than 10.5 to keep the speeders down. Thank you very much.
Sheila, do you want to
Yeah, no,
respond to this again?
thank you, Alex. All good points, and will all be considered. And yes, I hope we've made it abundantly clear that we are coordinating with the Elm Beacon Connector project, and that is an area where we started internal discussions, what should be part of what project, where it makes sense. Because obviously the Elm Beacon Connector project will be implemented first. So we're trying to make sure that that intersection is as safe as possible. And I also heard you about the travel lanes. I was sort of like trying to give a range, and we're hoping that in some parts of the street are actually wider than we showed on the section, so that we can have both and make it easier for buses, but also have adequate bike and buffer lanes.
Got it. Thank you, Viola.
You're welcome.
Great. Next we'll take about 1 or 2 more and then move back to the chat. So do Jay Wilson first and then Derek DuPont. Jay Wilson.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. 2 concerns. My most relevant experience through this corridor, although it may be a neighborhood for some, of course, is riding buses, and mostly the 83, although not exclusively. And I have a concern about any floating bus stops, which may be related to this project. I waited at a floating bus stop on Washington, the new floating island stops along Washington the other day. And there are railings. There's a very wide area for people waiting for the bus. And there's a railing, and I think people are inclined to lean up against that railing. And I found that the bike lane directly behind the railing was so close to the railing that it wasn't comfortable or safe to lean up against that railing. And so I wondered, well, why is the front area as wide as unnecessarily wide, in my opinion? And couldn't the railing be moved? The bike lane could remain where it is. The railing could be moved forward, and you would be able to lean up against it while you're waiting, maybe for a long time, for the bus to come and not have to worry about having a bicyclist racing right directly inches away from you, or for that matter, the bicyclist, seeing somebody leaning up against the railing. I just think those floating islands could be better designed in terms of what I was just the experience that I had. The other thing is, especially at the corner of Park, there's a lot of bicyclists who just kind of ignore the traffic signals and cut Park Street if they're coming. I mostly see it when they're coming from Union Square, and I do think that uh, obviously the focus of this is on the infrastructure, but I do think there's an important dimension to bicycle safety and safety in general, which is following the traffic laws. And I think there could be a little more attention to that aspect of safety and enforcement of rules, especially for bicyclists. In my experience, they are I'm not a big fan of cars going 30 miles an hour, but I think, in my experience, the most dangerous dimension of safety is bicyclists ignoring traffic laws, and I wish there could be more attention to that dimension of safety. Thank you.
Yeah, I can briefly speak to the floating bus island. Most likely, that will not be part of a design element of a quick build. So just to answer that. And then I was wondering, Greg, if you want to answer the question about where the railings and the waiting areas are, why we designed the floating bus islands as they are.
Yeah, I think that is a good piece of feedback. And we do have there will be the floating bus stops as part of the Somerville Ave Central Street construction project that's starting later this year. So I think that is a good piece of feedback, that those railings, the intention of the railing primarily is to separate the waiting area from the bike lane, so that people biking don't accidentally sort of intrude on the bus stop. But it is a good piece of feedback to know that people also use those maybe as a resting place. So we can look at the positioning of those railings and see if there's any flexibility to shift them a little bit further away from the bike lanes.
Yeah, I do have a question along those lines. It seems to me that I'm not quite sure I understood exactly where you are waiting right now, but the wider part where the bus actually stops and people get on the bus is intentionally wider. It has to be at least 8 feet for accessibility access on the bus.
Wheelchairs,
And
yeah.
yeah, wheelchairs. And so the railing is meant that you wait, you lean against the railing facing the street. The other side of the railing was not meant to be leaned against.
Oh, no. I would, I was in the waiting area for the bus stop, and then went back to lean against it from the waiting area for the bus stop, and realized that it wasn't safe because you're so close to where the bike lane is.
Okay.
So I just
That's
seen
an
that.
interesting point. Yeah.
I wasn't thinking quite so much about the how much width would be necessary to accommodate a wheelchair, but it did seem like the waiting area was longer, and I didn't measure it, but longer than it may need to be for accommodating different needs there. But there was this railing that was awfully inviting as something to lean
Mm-hmm.
against, and it just didn't make sense to, because of how close he would be to the bicycle,
Okay.
yeah. And I
Yeah, so
wondered,
you didn't even feel safe having the bicycles on the other side of the railing,
right,
passing across.
it's
Yeah, yeah,
really close to where
yeah.
you would be if you were leaning. And I thought, gee, this is an awfully wide waiting area. Maybe the railing could be moved forward, leaving everything else the same, perhaps.
Hmm. Yeah, no,
Um,
that's great feedback.
yeah, anyway, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. I am gonna move to Derek. You want to ask your question, and then we'll do a couple from the chat.
Hi. My question's probably been mostly answered at this point, so I'm just kind of adding a voice of concern about the Craigie Street, Somerville Ave, Elm Street intersection. Just because it is kind of a unpleasant intersection for regardless of what way you're using to what mode of transportation you're using to go through it. I know at the Elm Beacon, one of the feedback sessions for that, we talked about it and how that project won't be changing anything about like the entrance to the slip lane, how that would probably require a larger reconstruction effort. But if anything can be done in this project to add flex posts on the Somerville Ave side, I think that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah, Derek, thank you for that comment, and certainly mirrors all of our concerns. I do want to caution everybody, the other additional complication on that intersection is that the emergency vehicles use it heavily. So that's where the issue with the flex post will come in. But yes, absolutely, that is a point of concern, no matter what project it's part of, ours or the Elm Beacon connector.
Great. Thank you. We'll do a couple of questions from the chat. So we have, how can pedestrians cross safely to and from bus stops to get on and off the bus where bike lanes are in between and the bus pulls up where the sidewalk is? So how can we ensure the flow of traffic coming on and off the buses with the bike lanes?
So most of the time in this quick build project for our scope, we will have most likely a shared bus lane and bike lane. And so the safety for people getting on and off buses, they shouldn't be in conflict with a bicyclist. And the bicycle rider, I would highly recommend to stop behind the bus and then wait. I know I ride my bicycle, I don't always do that, but that should be the appropriate safe behavior for these bus stops that are still against the curb. As I said, the other scenario that I believe you might describe is this floating bus island where the waiting area and the area that pedestrians enter the bus is separated by a railing and then a bike lane. And all of those designs have at least 2 access points where there's like basically a crosswalk across the bike lane. And we also have internal discussions, how can we assure that people approaching those areas on bicyclists are slow enough. And we welcome any suggestions there. We are trying a little bit of new things on the West Broadway project. And Greg, I don't know if you can talk to some of what we were trying to do there.
Yeah, we are trying some new markings in the bike lane and some horizontal rumble strips out of thermoplastic. So yeah, we are trying some different things to encourage people biking to slow down at floating bus stop, slow down and stop. But as Viola mentioned, this as a quick build project, this project on Somerville Ave will not include any new floating bus stops. So the only 2 floating bus stops that will be on this stretch are as part of that separate project that's starting this year. And we can certainly pass along this feedback to them. They have completed design, but we'll certainly, share that feedback with them.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, for keep saying that. In my mind, these projects are not part of ours, but of course, for all of you using Somerville Avenue, it will look like it's part of a Somerville Avenue project. So I appreciate Greg mentioning that you will see floating bus islands. They are actually constructed and not quick built at the intersection of Central and Somerville Ave.
I'm gonna move back to more people who have their hands raised. So we have about 5 people. We'll go Gustav, Marguerite, and Joshua. Gustav, you can ask your question.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, great. So thank you for putting this on. This is very exciting. I both drive and bike through this area, and it's, this is one of the older projects where it's a popular corridor that maybe once upon a time was state of the art, but now is quite dangerous. I want to start with something specific. We were shown the picture of the bus stop at Market Basket. There's another issue in the same area, which is that when you're exiting Market Basket, which is about 200 feet down the road, you have extremely poor visibility to the left due to the parked cars. So I would suggest moving this bus stop about 200 feet forward to take the last, 4 or so parking spaces over there. And then this current curb bump out here could become parking. That would make a proper bus stop and also much safer to exit Market Basket. I also have a more general question, which is if you have considered putting a bidirectional bike lane on specifically the north side here. The bike paths that are proposed will have the same issue that a lot of other bike paths have, which is that they're way too narrow. It's impossible to pass somebody. And so there will be people darting in and out of the bike path to try to overtake each other. And it's also, of course, impossible for parents to ride next to their child and anything like this. In this case, the corridor is so wide that if you can put a proper 10-foot bidirectional bike path on the north side, that would also give you enough buffer that you can have proper pedestrian islands at all of the crosswalks. So you only have to cross, the traffic and then the bike path separately instead of everything all at once. So I really think that this is something that should be considered here. This is a long segment where I think this can be implemented and be very successful.
Thank you, Gustav, for that comment, and definitely something we can look into. I do want to mention the challenges of a two-way bike lane on a corridor like this. We have lots of side streets and we have lots of small businesses. So that's always the issue. If you put it on one side, how do people then enter their side streets on the other? So we're dealing with a lot more crossings that we have to try to design for in a safe way. But we can certainly consider it and look at it. As I said, I'm hoping that in many spaces along the corridor, we will have more room to create wider buffers. But I totally hear your concern.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Joshua.
I'm wondering if there will be any bike parking added as part of this project. There's a lot of small businesses here that, it'd be nice to be able to use new bike lanes to come up to them and then bike right at them. So, yeah, are there any new bike parking planned to be added?
Thank you, Joshua. If we can afford it, we will certainly look into it. We have sort of a separate budget for bike parking and a separate program to locate them. We can work with the folks that manage that. But again, I would love to say yes, wholeheartedly yes to it. But we will look into it and do what we can to add. If you have specific locations that you feel like, I mean, as you said, it makes sense in front of small businesses, but if there are any particular locations, please let us know. As Rishika said, email us or even add a 311. There's a category when you do a 311 that is bicycle parking. So feel free to do one or both. And yeah, thank you for that comment.
Okay. Next, Martin.
So, two things really. Is there any thought to putting in dedicated bicycle signals at traffic lights to give a clearer indication of when bicycles are allowed to go? And then the other is to follow up on Gustav's suggestion. Looking at most of the corridor, most of the large parking lots are on the south side. So it really does, like, I 100% agree that putting a two-way bike lane on the north side is a much safer option, because you have all of these places on the south side where you're going to be forced to put cuts in the protected lane to allow those parking lot exits.
Yeah, thank you, Gustav, for reiterating the desire for a two-way bike lane on one side. And also mentioning the one aspect of two-way bike lanes that I did not say is, what do we do at intersections, and that it will require a specific bicycle signal. And that is where I'm have to give the same answer as I almost did for the bicycle rack. Our budget will be limited, and generally adding a light like that is not part of a quick build project budget. We will try our best, especially if we do think that the two-way bicycle lane is the better option to go with.
We have 3 more people in the queue, so we'll go John first, and then Thomas and Margaret. John.
Hi, yeah. I just want to, I guess, mostly agree with a lot of what I've heard here, and specifically about things like, for example, the market basket exit. There isn't enough site for a bike to safely go past that. They have to actually go take the lane, because there's no visibility, and it's pretty dangerous the way people come out. So even doing something like, if you're adding bike parking, like maybe if there's no budget for moving the bus stop, putting bike parking where that last spot would be or something like that, just to increase the visibility. But my other question, but my main question here is, oh, sorry, and also the gentleman that was talking earlier, I believe his name is Jay, about the floating bus stops. If anything does happen with floating bus stops and rails, I would agree. The space gets narrower, and I believe part of the idea is there to try to slow down bikes, but it actually it creates potential conflict, because if the bike is at all wide, it's gonna be very tight against that railing. So even if it was a different railing for future ones, and I do worry about things like mentioned the laminate, the kind of horizontal rumble strips. I worry about what those would look like in the winter, based on what I've seen. In the winter, bike lanes are hit or miss, and that doesn't seem like it would get cleared very well. But on to my actual question, Central Street. Jay also mentioned that people are running lights on Somerville, and I think a big part of that is Central Street and the fact that it's got a really soft turn. And what happens is cars will inevitably go into the bike lane there and then turn without looking, and there's not great visibility. So I'm curious if there's, and I missed some of the beginning of this presentation, so I'm sorry if I'm asking questions that already been answered. But is Central Street, is that turn going to be hardened on Central Street from Somerville?
So John, the Central Street intersection is actually being redone as part of another project, and that is a fully constructed project. And I'm trying to find, we have a little plan that we had put up. I don't know how much we can see on that. So yes, that will be improved hugely.
Okay, fantastic. sorry for.
No,
I'm sure I missed
no.
what was
And we
meant.
just, I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, we only mentioned it sort of in passing. There, we do have a web page for that where you can look at the plan.
Wonderful. I'll dig that out.
Yeah, my apology, I cannot find it that fast.
No, I'm sure I'll be able to find it then. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that will actually do a lot, because for me personally, I find that if I
Here,
go through that red light going straight at the right time after stopping, it ensures I'm not in conflict with cars.
yeah. So
Beautiful.
this is the little plan, and this is actually a, this is the Dunkin' Donut, this is Central Street. And so you will actually have, as we said, the floating bus island. So you will have bicycle lanes on the level of the sidewalk, I believe. If not, they will be protected behind the floating bus island. And then we were not able to do anything directly on the intersection. So the turning right and that conflict is unfortunately still there, even after this project. But some of the conflicts on the north side here with Dunkin' Donuts it should be helped. And you can see is anybody seeing my cursor? Can you see the cursor, John? Or am I just pointing?
No, I
Okay,
cannot.
sorry. I'm like radically like so the north side there, the corner at Central and Duncan, you see that new curb extension. So that should also slow down cars turning right. As you said, that
Yeah,
I believe that's what you mentioned, that it's a very shallow turn and people just
yeah,
like take it
that's
without
awesome.
thinking. Yeah,
Great. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Just
So,
to
oh, sorry.
comment too, I know we've had a few comments or questions about the Market Basket driveway and challenges with visibility at the driveway exit. So I believe that some of that issue will be addressed through the clear corners markings that Viola described. Those, in addition to crosswalks, we also apply those to intersections and high volume driveways, which I imagine Market Basket would fall into that category. So I think regardless of the location of the bus stop, we would likely pull back parking from the Market Basket exit to improve visibility of the vehicles that are exiting.
That's great. Thank you.
Great. We have 2 more people in the queue. Thomas.
Hello. Thank you for this presentation. Very interesting. A lot of information here. I got a couple of questions, more business related. I'm part of the Chamber of Commerce, and I know you're going to do outreach to businesses, and it sounds like it's going to, you're going to just kind of walk in. One of the problems with that is the people that that run or own the businesses aren't always there. So I think there needs to be a better coordinated outreach to the business community along Somerville Ave. This is a major business sector. A lot of small businesses. I know we have, the large ones, Market Basket, but there's a lot of small mom and pops that are already feeling affected by the loss of parking that was done with the original Somerville Ave project. And with additional loss of parking, there'll be some concerns. The other thing, over by when you get over by the skating rinks in Conway Park, they're used, especially in the wintertime. A lot of people are coming from out of town. In parking, it gets very, very busy down there. There's a minimal amount of parking for the rinks, and it then tends to flow into the side streets. So again, the concern would be, where do those vehicles go? So, outreach I think is a key thing here, so the businesses feel like they do have a voice in this matter. So that's one of the things I wanted to ask. I don't know if you want to answer that first, and then I got 1 or 2 others things.
Yeah. I can answer the outreach question. Yes, we do know that when we block walk and go into businesses, we likely will not always meet the people who own the businesses. So we do also do email outreach, try to find times to connect with them. We'll also be working with our economic development department that supports a lot of the small businesses and coordinating with them so that we can do that. We'll also be reaching out and coordinating with Union Square Main Street so we can support and talk directly to business owners. If there are any other ways that you feel like we should be reaching out, please let us know. Anything that we can learn and change is always helpful. Yeah,
And you should definitely be talking to the Chamber of Commerce.
sure. Yeah, that would be great.
And again, ahead of time on some projects, it seems like by the time that input's happening, a lot of the design decisions have been made. So the earlier the better on that. And just a question on projects that have been done. Are you going back and taking a look at them? I'll use Summer Street as an example. It's a major change on Summer Street. It got a lot narrower. And I was wondering, are you tracking how well that's going? Have bicycle accidents reduced? And what about cars? What's happening there with vehicles? I know, and I live right on Spring Hill, so I'm up and down it every day. And I've heard a lot of people feel like for people driving, it's become more dangerous because it's very narrow and it's a lot of zigzags in and out. The area up around St. Catharines, it's difficult to make some of the turns on Harvard Street, Spring Street, and into St. Catharines parking lot. Those areas there. So I'm kind of curious to see if you're going back after a project's been done to see, do we need to tweak some things to make some changes to make it better for everyone?
Yeah, thank you, Thomas, for that comment. And I don't know how much you have observed the whole Spring Hill project, but even within a project, we are certainly willing to make changes when things don't work. And especially around St. Catherine, we did a whole redesign even after it was built and made changes. So yes, to that question, we are not, just saying our design is always right. And long term, we are, as we've said in this project, we're doing data collections before the project. Even a meeting and a outreach phase like this, what we are actually collecting is a lot of the more experiential data. And for example, your comment, it's like small businesses have felt even after the, I don't know, 2009. I don't have the date completely right when Somerville Avenue was last redone. That feedback we do report, we record, and we take that into consideration as we move forward. And that is across the board. We have a very tight city community. We work with all different departments, and all that feedback immediately goes into the next design and even in current designs.
Thank you. And just one, I had put this into the chat, but it didn't get asked. I'm just wondering, on these meetings, we can't see who's participating. So I don't know if there's 5 people on this meeting or if there's 105. And I was wondering why the city doesn't allow the participants to see who's there.
Yeah. I'm not specifically sure, but we do have some like meeting laws within the city as well. So based on that, this is a format that we choose. I think you should be able to see the number of attendees that are here.
No,
You aren't. Okay.
no, you
We'll
can't.
take that
And,
back.
and just so you know, I'm on a state board and I can see everyone, and sometimes we have 200-300 people at a meeting and I can get on the participants list and see who's at the meeting.
Yeah. If it helps, we had about 65 people that did show up today.
That's great, because if this was a public meeting in person, we'd be able to see who was there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I just feel like this is very restrictive because we can't really tell, who's in the
Yeah.
room.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we have other opportunities to engage, so feel free to also come out and be part of that. I will also add that every year do a key performance index study, which comes out at the end of the year, where we share all the data and all the learnings and changes. So you can learn more there as well on the website page.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. We have two people have the hands raised. I know it's 7:30. We can stay on for a little bit more. Margaret, do you want to ask your question?
Hi. I do have a couple questions and a couple comments. I understand this is predominantly for pedestrians and bicyclists, but the prior caller mentioned Somerville Ave. Navigating and getting around the city now is absolutely horrific. I just want to state that. I know I'm probably in the minority on that right now, but I'm just throwing that out there. Given this part of Somerville Ave that's being discussed, last week there was a meeting regarding the Union Square area and a major development vote that was taken that's going to go on between Market Basket all the way up to Park Street. That this is being presented for 2027. Is there overlap in those two potential projects for development?
Yeah, thank you, Marguerite, for both your feedback on feeling that, you know, the nightmare of driving around the city. We do take that seriously too. And then the Summer Nova project is what the development project is what you were referring to. And that is primarily in our planning department right now with mobility and feedback. And right now, that project will not have a physical impact on the Somerville Avenue, on our quick build project, but we're definitely in coordination with that project as well and aware of it.
Well, I'm thinking traffic-wise, it's between trucks and everything. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, we're aware of it, and some of our colleagues are intimately familiar with the project. So yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for pointing that out, and we will take that into consideration. I mean, our utmost and foremost goal is safety, and unfortunately, the most vulnerable is what we're focusing on. And so it's right when you said, you know, it's like a lot of these projects seem more pedestrian and bicycle focused, but for example, the clear corners, I know it's like we are taking some parking away because of that, and in our mind, it's not even legal parking, but we understand the need for parking. However, even for a driver, I feel safer when I can see kids running along. So, you know, some of those, like, we're trying to.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So we're trying our best. Yeah.
Yep. It's just that it's one of the prior callers stated it. I remember who it was though. Is that, you know, there's a lot of emphasis on cars and not following the rules and speeding and stuff. Well, you have bicyclists doing the same thing, pedestrians doing the same thing, and and this is just me kind of going to be on a soapbox for a second. I don't know when it became okay to walk into the middle of a street, crossing it, crosswalk or not.
Yep. Nope.
I grew up with you stop and you look both ways no matter what. And I grew up in Somerville, and I have recently moved because of a lot of this. I still have property there, and my mother is there. But either way, I'm sorry, I apologize for that.
No.
But the bicyclist not obeying as well makes some of these mitigation strategies more difficult because they're being put in place and you're expecting people to adhere to them. And when they don't, it doesn't cause chaos, but it does cause issues when you have bicyclists running red lights.
No, absolutely. I mean, every mode needs to obey the traffic regulations to make it safe for everybody. No, thank you, Margaret. I think if you don't mind, we have three more hands. Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Roberto.
Hello, can you hear me? All right, good. I posted some questions in chat because I had to go, but then thankfully you're still here. So I managed to come back and raise my hand. I initially I welcomed this project a lot, but seeing, for example, the slide that's being shown here, this gives me a lot of concern. I grew up in Rio, where most of the through streets, unless they're massively wide, like 5 lanes wide, they have no parking. And I don't understand why here in Somerville insist on putting parking in every single street as much as it fits. And at the same time, then we got a 4 feet wide bike lane. I would be interested in understanding the city's guidelines for how wide a bike lane should be, whether people should be passing on the bike lane, because 4 feet is, I have a cargo bike, people won't be able to pass me. I'm also interested in understanding how wide these buffers are going to be. And I have a lot more feedback that I'm going to leave to, I think, the other meetings I'm going to be in person to, but I wanted to focus on this. And then in the same regard, I've seen a lot of the installations, the flex posts get put in the middle of the buffer, which causes cars to park right next to the flex post, reducing the buffer in half. It happened on Washington, it happened on Bow Street. And I would like y'all to be able to address with the contractor to put the flex posts on the leftmost side. I think the project is like it's life or death in these small details. The Washington Street project is full of mistakes, and I would like this to not have them. Thank you. So sorry if I sound grumpy. It's I wish this was better though.
Yeah, thank you, Roberto. I mean, all good considerations that we can put into the design phase.
Okay, next, we are at 7:40. We can still stay for a few more questions. I apologize that we aren't getting to ones in the comments, but we will hopefully be able to engage in other ways over the next few weeks, and we will have a survey out. We have Cole.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to say I'm glad this is happening. I do think something that would improve things, and I'm glad to see it mentioned, is the potential of removing some lights. I do think there are too many lights on Somerville Ave. And it's both as a like cyclists and driving. It means a lot of stopping and starting unnecessarily. And I think it increases the red light running and those kinds of things. And a lot of those lights seem like you're waiting for a while for nothing. I also think they make pedestrians wait rather than having priority in the crossing, and overall don't really serve much of a purpose, some of those lights. And I'm just want to say I'm glad to see that that's a potential, and I hope you go through that. Thank you. That's it.
Good. Thank you. Next we have ZZ.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for having this. So I just wanted to go off of what I was actually just about to mention the whole intersection timer thing, and I was wondering if that's actually something that in a way, like it seems like it's trying to promote, like safe pedestrian crossings and biker safety and all that stuff. But, sitting at an intersection, especially that one between Elm Street and Somerville Avenue, like that one is like a 20-second timer and it's like a ghost town. I can sometimes feel like there's like ghost pedestrians around me kind of thing because of like how, I mean, how much time is passing while I'm literally just almost parked at that intersection. And so that's where I'm feeling as though I'm seeing more of these like bikers going through these red lights, is that they're like, oh, it's 20 seconds and nobody else is going through. Well, I might as well just do this. And then next thing you know, that's when the car could just come in some other direction and that can be that. So it's just, I'm wondering if that's one of those things where we can just like decrease the timers and, or even just get rid of some of these lights, because it seems like it's good on paper, but then again, like when you actually like are driving through it and you, especially at like 4 or 5 p.m. rush hour, it just seems like it's just like a chore ritual thing. So Yeah, I mean, those are just my thoughts. I might be in the minority here, but yeah,
No,
thanks
thank
again.
you, Zizi, and I believe this is what shows up here. That's why I call you Zizi. I hope that's okay. Since you mentioned the Elm Beacon intersection, I would highly recommend to go to the Elm Beacon Connector webpage, and there's a poster that talks about the traffic signal timing, and it demonstrates very well how complicated an intersection is, and also shows the improvements that will be made with the Elm Beacon Connector project. So that intersection should be a lot better. And we will, as I said at the beginning, what we can do with this quick build project, we will also try as much as we can to improve the traffic signal timing on, like, for example, the Park Street or Dane Street. And this is exactly the feedback we want. If you see any other issues along the corridor where you see lots of people running over by red, both in any mode, that's the kind of feedback we appreciate. Thank you.
Mm.
You. We have Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I clicked the wrong thing. Okay, Sarah, you should be able to talk now.
Hello?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, great. I made a comment in the chat earlier about what kind of buffer zone would be used here. And I saw in a slide a minute ago that it looks like it's mainly parking using to separate the bike lane from the standard travel lane. And I just want to, express that I'm very firmly against this as a cyclist, as someone who was biking on Somerville Ave, like 30 minutes ago or whatever. This feels like a more unsafe configuration than the street as it exists now. And I would honestly be more inclined to just take the lane as a cyclist, because I find often that lanes that are separated by parking just really encourages people to stand there while they're unloading their cars, which makes sense, but I feel like really defeats the point of the project, unfortunately.
Sarah, thank you for that comment. And let me understand. So you're talking about the reason you don't feel safe in these parking protected bike lanes is because when people park, that they will just exit onto the buffer and just stand there.
Yeah, that's another issue, and it creates another scenario for being doored, and when you have like the door to your left and then a curb, there's no room for you to go around that, which isn't ideal being doored on your right side either, but there's more space there to avoid that.
If and we do know that we are pushing the minimum requirements, and we're going beyond, like in the ideal scenario we would have wider buffers, and that is what some other participants have mentioned beforehand. May I ask you, if we had wider buffer lanes, would you then feel these are safer? It sounds like you have a bigger issue beyond the buffers and the dooring. So I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, generally. I also just feel like they provide really bad visibility as a cyclist. They often tend to then dump you right back out into the road. And, now cars are less aware of me because there's a whole row of parked cars, instead of just being, traveling along the same route. So that's what I have experienced most often.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you for that feedback.
Thank you.
Rishika, can we take maybe Zach, who has not said anything,
Yeah,
and then I think we have to close this meeting.
Yeah, Zach, you can go next.
Hi, I wanted to ask about the projected timeline. You were saying that we wouldn't likely expect to see this until 2027 at the soonest, despite it being a quick build project. And I'm wondering, since I'm kind of comparing in my head to like Cambridge's Vassar Street project, which because it's one of the ones where it doesn't involve removing a substantial amount of parking, they're able to move at a quicker pace because they're just doing quick build materials, so they know that they can make still have a good period of public community input and outreach, because that's of course vital to anything that's going to modify a public street, but move a bit faster than taking 2 whole years before we start to see these kind of vital safety improvements to a high crash area. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback, Zach. And I don't really know what to say. We're trying to be realistic with our resources, and as I mentioned earlier, a quick build project still requires the same design and outreach. So we're trying to give ourselves adequate time for that. And it's outreach to the public, but also a lot of coordination internally. And we're trying to do it right so that we do not repeat mistakes that we've seen, or not mistakes, but challenges we see on other projects. We have given ourselves ample of time. I absolutely agree. And we will hopefully use that time well. And if there's any way that we can shorten it, we will do so.
Thanks so much.
I think that's the last question at the moment, just given the time that we're at. If we weren't able to get to your question, we have them noted down. So any of your comments and questions will definitely be kept into account as we're going over the thinking about the design and next steps. As I mentioned, even though I got the dates wrong, we are doing pop-up starting next week. So that's Monday the 16th, and then Wednesday the 18th, and then June 23rd, which is the next Monday. And then tomorrow we will have surveys, so please feel free to even add more information there. And you can always reach out to us at transportation@somervillema.gov. Thank you.
Yeah, and Rishika, I assume we can send an email with the correct dates and also update it in the presentation, which we will upload. So please don't get confused.
Yes.
Thank you. And I do also for all the commenters and feedback we got at every end of our outreach phases, we put together a summary report, and that summary report also has an appendix with all of your comments. And we generally try to be good and answer or respond to all of it. So just, this is not going to come next month, but at the end of this phase, and then obviously will take us some time to collect and go through them.
And we've captured all of the comments and questions that came in through the chat as well. So even if we didn't get to specifically address your question or comment, we've taken all of that down, and it will be included as part of our next steps for design of this project.
Great. Well, thank you for coming out today. We'll see you over the next few weeks.
Thank you, everybody.